On today's show, we're going to be interviewing Drew Wallingford and talking about turning your life struggles into your next book. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey toward publication. I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
And I'm Christina Catane, and I write Christian fantasy.
And welcome to all of our listeners and our chatters. We're so happy to have y'all here. If this is your first time coming into our chat, please just put a little message down there and let us know you're there so we can all welcome you. We love everyone who comes here live for the chat, but we also love everybody that listens to us on all of the avenues that you can listen to a podcast. So if you're one of those people, then we would appreciate if you would like and subscribe, tell all your friends. And like Tina is always happy to say, if you hate what you hear, tell everybody how much you hate it and tell them where they can find it as well. So we're for sure joined this morning with Shell. Good morning, Shell. It's nice to see you bright and early for you this morning. Shell's on the West Coast. We were just talking with our guest today and telling him how it's summer. We're not sure how many chatters we're going to have, but it already is appearing as if it's going to be a little bit slower today, but that's okay because we'll be able to fill the conversation. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so we start every episode with a segment that we call our What's Up. It is a chance for us to catch up with each other since last week and see what's going on in our personal lives. And Tina, I'm going to shoot it to you. What's up with you, my friend?
Not a whole lot.
The end. All right, my turn.
What did I do this week? Nothing. In my writing career, really, honestly, I didn't do anything.
Still struggling with getting across the finish line, huh?
I am, and I just decided that I was going to do a lot of intellection activities.
Okay.
And just let myself and take the pressure off, because I think that's part of the problem. Because I put the pressure on, and then it just paralyzes me.
Right.
Because like the sprints, I have no problem because there's no pressure.
Right. You can write whatever you want.
You would think that having to read it online live would be pressure, but after 222 times of doing it, it's not. It's not pressure at all. It's just like what happens. But having to write something that I'm going to put out into the world for possible critique, that is pressure. And it's just, and I also think that I need to start writing books that are only 50,000 words, because it seems like I get to 50,000 words and then I struggle.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But, you know, I did stuff. We did stuff in our personal life that was fun. And, you know, my daughter's here with my grandchildren. And we're going out to the Glamper. So
that's awesome. Real quick before we move on to my What's Up, somebody who is just tuning in and doesn't know what you mean by intellection, can you give a quick, like it's a Clifton Strength. We've had Becca Syme on the show a couple of times, and we all have talked about our Clifton Strengths. But can you tell everybody, what does that mean, intellection, and what does it mean by you need to intellect?
Well, intellection is my number 2 strength, so it's kind of wrapped up in who I am. And so it's just a need to think deeply about things. And I've learned, when I found strengths for writers, it was like it changed my whole life, because all my life I was lazy, I was a dreamer, I was a procrastinator, wasn't getting stuff done. My head was in the clouds, like, you know, all those things that people say.
Yes, all the negative things.
That is my superpower. And when I learned that that is my superpower, and I learned how to harness it to help my writing, it was a game changer for me. And so if I just spend time thinking deeply, then I do better. The writing comes out better. And the thing is that intellection is like a slow cooker. You put all the stuff into the pot and you turn it on and you just let it cook. So I could be doing the dishes, playing a little video game, going for a walk, going for a drive, cleaning the house, vacuuming, taking a shower, taking a nap. And the intellection is cooking in the background. And when the bell goes off, the bell goes off. And so I've put what I need to do. I have less than 10,000 words to go. Just that's the estimate, obviously.
Right.
to finish my book, and I'm just gonna let it go until the dinger goes off, and then hopefully I can just sit down and write it all at once.
Right.
That's my plan.
That's awesome. Well, this kind of will kind of flow into my what's up is that my what's up is this week I got to be on the Lunch Table podcast. I was a guest on their episode that actually they I was just talking with Drew before we went live and he said that he had to split it in two. And he didn't say it's because I talked too long, but I really think that was the problem is that I talked too much. But one of the things I was able to share with them because they also one of the hosts is kind of stalemated in like the middle part of his book. Now it's nonfiction, but I shared with him that like in fiction we call that the murky middle, but I think it's very similar. And I'm gonna give you the same advice I gave him: go to the end, write the end, and then once you do that, like if you know how you want it to end, or maybe you don't, but just go to the part that's gonna be the fun part to write. So like and then you can like figure out how to get to that point.
I actually am at the end, so that's
Yeah, but 10,000 words isn't the end. 10,000 words is the
yeah.
last, like, 25%. I mean,
It's
like,
the
go to
build
the
up to. Yeah,
yeah.
I have that written.
So you
Like
already
the
had that
very
written.
end. Yes, I already did.
Okay. Well, then I
But
don't know.
like,
We
so
just
I'm
have
like the build up to that
yeah.
is where I am. It's like I'm in the final battle kind of situation.
Well, then I guess the only advice I have is that we have to get together and get some writing done
Maybe I
together.
just need to watch The Exorcist or something.
What? What?
There's there's demon possession. It's a long
Oh,
story.
I see. Okay.
I
So
write Christian fantasy.
right.
Sometimes it gets a little dark. Not on the
Yeah.
level of The Exorcist. That was a joke. I hate that. I hated that movie before I was a Christian, and I would never watch it now.
Yeah, I never could not.
Yeah.
I don't like horror films. That's just my whole thing. So all right. So, yeah, so I was on their podcast this week. It was really great. If you would like to take a listen, there is a link in our show notes for you to go and listen to that. But it was a lot of fun. Those guys are a lot of fun. So it's a group of three pastors that are just honest. They talk about things that you normally don't talk about on podcasts and like that. Maybe you would talk about them at the lunch table with your other pastor friends. So that's the whole idea of the name. And they had me on there to talk about like writing and how pastors can take what they do and publish and like lots of great conversations. And so, hey, Barbara's here as well. Good morning, Barbara. Um, so yeah, so it was a whole lot of fun. And so we had talked, I had met Drew and the guys, Matt and Nate at if you guys remember back in May, I went to Tennessee for a retreat and I met the guys there. And I came into like a gathering room and they were off in the corner doing this podcast. And I was coming in there to sit and write because I couldn't find anywhere else to write. And they let me hang out and it was just so much fun. They were very funny. And Drew asked if we would like to do a collab. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what we would collab on. Well, the more we talked, the more we realized there was a lot of great things that we could like talk about
That's an
together.
overlap.
Lots of overlap. So it was a lot of fun. So this is why Drew is coming on here. And Drew actually messaged us in the private chat and he says he doesn't know if this will be helpful, but these are his strengths. Communication, number one.
Oh boy.
Hilarious because Drew is like the driving force of their podcast. I don't know this for fact, but I'm going to tell you that's what it is. We'll find when we bring him on, we're going to ask him that. My number one is communication. And who was the driving force of this one? It was me as well. So achiever, I can see that. Woo, I can totally see that. Relator, not realtor, relator and developer. He's a real estate developer.
That's funny.
Yeah, so Drew's gonna want to go back and watch our episodes with Becca Syme because she really talks a lot about great stuff about Clifton Strengths and writing.
And she's the number one input, and she has like a mind map in her head about the
Mm,
strengths, and also like the what is it called? You know where you have four letters. Oh my gosh, it's right here. It just went blank. Myers Briggs.
oh, the Myers-Briggs. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
the disc, and there's one other one. So she has like this mind map. She can
Hmm.
talk to somebody for like 10 minutes and tell them what they are. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
She's got
I
a crazy gift.
but like you said early on in this discussion was that you always thought this was a negative part about you, but you realized it was your superpower. That's the thing I like about Clifton Strengths is so many other personality tests teach you like, okay, here's what your problem is, or here's your personality. This is how you need to work it, or whatever. Where Clifton Strengths is like, here's your personality. This is how you're going to make other groups better. This is how
Yeah.
you're going to make your workplace
This
better,
is how
because
you're wired, and
this
this
is
is how
how
you
you're
can
what.
be successful based on. And when she
Yes.
said the words, thinking is working.
Mm-hmm.
For me, thinking is working. I can count that in my hours of work that I'm just thinking, because
Mm-hmm.
it's my superpower, and it's how I can tell the difference in my writing between the times that I let myself think and the times that I don't let myself think because I think I'm procrastinating or wasting time, or
Mm-hmm.
all
Right.
of the labels that people give it.
So here are mine. I have at least one from every color, which is not normal. Communication is my number one. Belief is my second, which makes sense. I write Christian romance. Input, I write historical Christian romance. So all of the research and the studying makes sense. Connectedness and activator. Again, the activator, like, come on, guys,
That
let's do a
gets you. Yep.
podcast. Yeah, I get you guys
My
going.
husband is number one strategic,
Hmm.
then belief, then activator, restorative, achiever.
Wow, he's got a lot
The
of
man
green.
drives me crazy.
Yeah. All right. We could turn this
That's all I
into
have to say.
a Clifton Strink episode, but it's not what we're here for. We're here today to talk with Drew Wallingford. He is a pastor, an author, and a podcaster. He's been working in youth ministry for over 10 years. He's a husband, a father of two, and deeply passionate about ministry work, creativity, and the special needs community, given his family situation with a daughter who is autistic. His writing includes elements of what it is like to live with autism in your house, how to work through hard things in your life, and even practical creativity in ministry and how it can be used as a tool to reach people for the gospel. And on top of all of that, he is also a podcaster, co-hosting the podcast The Lunch Table, a podcast for pastors that seeks to tell real stories of ministry that others are afraid to tell. So welcome to the show, Drew.
Woo!
Ooh.
I every time I read through my strengths, I always like literally read woo like that. That's just
Yeah.
like my brain
See,
is like, yeah.
Tina,
But yeah, no, thank
yeah.
you so much for having me on with you guys. I'm really excited to be here, and it's crazy because I feel like we've ever since we talked about like, oh hey, we should collab. It's like
Mhm.
uh feels like it's been a long time, even though it probably really hasn't. It's just like a whoo, finally here.
Yeah, I know. It does feel like a long time. It seems to me, it feels like I went to Tennessee months ago, and
Yeah,
it's been just a little over a month. It's been crazy. A lot's happened back and
yeah,
since then.
definitely.
So, yeah. All right. So before we start talking, I mean, I read your bio, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and specifically your family, Drew.
Yeah, yeah. So my wife and I have been married for a little over 10 years, or right at 10 years basically.
Mhm.
And so we've been in ministry pretty much the whole time we've been even dating and stuff like that. And so it's been kind of an interesting way through life. Because I was literally like I did my internship getting ready for youth ministry
Mhm.
as we were talking about getting married. And so it
Mhm.
was like just straight in. She's always been a part of stuff, which is a huge blessing to us and stuff. And but outside of that, I have two kids. My
Mhm.
son Kipton is my typical child, and he's 7, and he is like a spitting image of me. He's a lot of fun. But he might actually be woo number one. Honestly, I
Oh.
would not be surprised. But so he's really into Minecraft right now and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to be in conversations with him. And then my daughter is 6. Her name is Kinsley, and she is the autistic child in my house.
Mm.
And she's pretty severely autistic. So the way that they rate it is that they give you kind of two sides. One's like physical function and like physical understanding, and one is emotional and like connection with other people.
Mhm.
She's a 1 on the physical side and stuff, like very capable. And it's like a scale from 1 to 3. But
Mhm.
she's a 3 on the communication side. And so she's
Mhm.
got, you know, she's completely nonverbal, and maybe has like 20 or 30 words that she uses on a normal basis. But you know, it's just a part of our life, you know, and you know, it's crazy how much that has shown me as a pastor, and how much that's you know, benefited the people that we try to reach. Honestly, I you know, it's such a big part of our life and story at this point that it's hard to not talk about sometimes, and I feel like I'm really annoying people when I talk about it sometimes. But but it's just amazing how God kind of just shows up in those moments. And you know, so yeah, that's
I love
where we're at.
I love how though you kind of set that up, that like, so I know that we may not have anyone listening right now that is raising an autistic child, but I know that we have a lot of people listening that are in the thick of it, that are going
Yeah.
through something right now. And so, you know, you're at the stage now where you feel like you know, you're making people sick by talking about all the time, which I don't think you are. But
That's good.
yeah. So, but at some point in this walk of life with that you and your wife are on, like you were in the thick of it, and it
Yeah.
probably felt like you couldn't see outside of it. Like, at what stage did you decide? This is my question, I guess. What stage did you decide that you needed to put this into a book?
So honestly, it took a while. And it's crazy because I did not foresee. I was kind of, you know, we were talking on our podcast, you know, just the other day about how, you know, Matt was like halfway through his book and all this stuff. And, you know, for me, I had been like that for forever with this book about small group strategy that I still have not finished. And I thought like, oh, this is, you know, and maybe it's the developer person in me, right? That I'm like, I just really want to go and add this to the world, that this is like something I do well that I can give to somebody else. And I really thought for sure that that would be like my one book or whatever. And I think it's kind of, I've realized after a while that that's not the right way to think about writing. You know, that
We
if it's
all
a
come in
passion,
that way, though. We
right? You
all
know,
come in that way.
we
Yeah.
definitely do. And I honestly, even our conversation the other day really helped me to think about like, okay, I need to put some more stuff out there. But
I was in that spot with my first book for 10 years,
yeah,
where I was in the midst of it.
yeah. And so honestly, when we got to the point where, so, and I'm kind of, you know, I don't want to overdo this part, you know, but the
That's fine.
in the beginning stages of finding out about her autism, it was a really depressing time in my life, and, you know, just in our house in general. And I did not think about anything creative like that for a while. Like I was just surviving probably for a good year. And then probably after that first year was done and we got her a little bit more stable and in school and all that kind of stuff, that was the time where I kind of just like finally got to breathe from it a little bit, you know, and it was like, okay, well, this is our reality, you know, and I want to do something, you know, with this. And my book, you know, it's not like a sit down page turner crazy book. It was just like, I just need to throw my emotions of what this is like at a page and, you know, maybe someone will understand my life if they look at this book for a couple minutes, you know. And it's been really good for that kind of stuff though. And I'm honestly, I think I'm really grateful that we have that, because there's, you know, every time we have a new teacher in Kinsley's life, you know, I will give them a copy of it just so it's like, here, understand Kinsley, you know, and you know, or there's so many pastor friends from Intern Academy that will, you know, which is the conference that we met at, you know, but that will just be like, oh man, hey, you know, I have this new family that has an autistic child, and I don't really know what to expect. I don't know how to help them, you know, and they'll pick up a copy, you know, for that reason. And you know, it's been cool to be able to kind of share from our struggles on those things. And actually I don't think I got to tell you this when we were on the podcast the other day, but I just started a new book on my stuff called When Grief Turns to Worship. And just kind
Oh.
of this idea of, you may not understand autism being in your house like me, but
Mhm.
everyone has times of grief in their life, and seeing the light through those moments, and just being able to worship in the middle of the chaos.
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
that's
Well,
that's a big piece of our life.
Romans 8:28, it says God will work all things together for the good of those who love him and are
Mhm.
called according
Hmm.
to his purpose. And I've discovered in my life that I don't believe that God caused or the things that I went through that were horrible in my past, but
Hmm.
he definitely turned them around to where now I can minister to people going through similar things.
Yeah.
And through my writing, I can touch on the deeper, like emotional kind of struggles that people go through in their walk with Christ. And he takes those things and he gives you the gift of there's a parent out there somewhere who's going through what you went through, who
Hmm.
feels like nobody gets it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's the gift that you have that you can give them, that you get it. They're
Mhm.
Yeah.
not alone.
Yeah.
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 That's definitely the hope for sure.
And I hope that our listeners also hear what you said about, because I so relate to this, that for like a year or more, you just couldn't do anything creative. And I think
Yeah.
that's super important, because I think that as creatives, we often like will also, we just talked our last episode about writer guilt. And when we
Mm.
carry around guilt about whether, because we're not writing, so
Yeah.
we feel guilty about it, or we are writing and our house is like messy, then we feel guilty about that. And
Yeah.
I think that like it is a natural healthy thing that our creativeness will tone down when we're in the middle of something, because there's only, I think, so much that we can like carry. And like, I praise God, we have a loving father that we can, lay our burdens at his lap, but it's still something that we have to endure. And
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of this still. My mother passed away less than a year ago, and I am still struggling. I have a book that's done, but I got to do the cover, and I have to do like a lot of like the end stuff that's creative. And I have the ability to do it. It's just really making myself, and I don't know what it is, but there's something stopping me. And again, I'm feeling guilty about it. I'm feeling like, my husband is like wanting to retire, and I need to get some more books out so we can like really realistically look at that. And it's just all this weight and pressure of what's going on in
Mm.
life that just makes me like not creative. And so it's so good to hear someone else say it, that it's not a Jen thing. It is just a
No.
human
Yeah.
thing.
Plus,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
had said before that there's so much of your mother in that book.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's part of it.
Drew wasn't here. My character, the main character in this, I did not realize how much of my mom's history and her experiences of growing up in the parsonage
Mm.
really flavor this character. It's not my mom's story, but there's a lot of like, so it does make it even more difficult for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all right. So, what do you have any advice that you would give to a writer out there who's in the thick of it? Like you at that time, you couldn't do anything, but like, what if you could go back in time and talk to Drew at that time? Would there be any advice that you would give to him or to any of our listeners that maybe are in the thick of something right now?
Yeah. I think the thing for me, if I could go back in time, I would actually. It's really funny with the sprint that we did that kind of went in this direction actually, but just this thought of I really took this mode of wanting to deal with it on my own and just
Mm,
fix it, right?
mhm,
And it began to become like part of my identity, and I started to get really upset with myself that I couldn't, right? And that's just wrong.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
like that's just not how that works. It's like you can't fix that, and it's not a problem to be fixed like that. And there's so many things that we deal with in life. Like, you can't just make it better, right off the bat, and I would have, if I would have taken more time to just like sit with God on it and let him deal with my heart. I think that
mm,
would have done me a lot better. And I think that's part of what made that a really hard season for me too, was that there was so much going on at the same time that it was just it was almost unbearable. Because it was, the my life at home was really crazy, but then also at church I already do all of the youth ministry and tech stuff, all the video and social media for our church. And on top of that, I was also overseeing all of our kids ministry. And
Wow.
so it was a lot. And it just became this season where it was just like, it was one thing I could handle that if everything at home was good, right?
Mm.
But
Mhm.
with everything at home not being good, it was like that it was over the limit of what
Mhm.
was possible in my mind and heart. And found that out really quickly. But if I would have said no to some things and just
Mhm.
said I need to sit with God instead, um, that would have done me a lot better than what I did. And so,
Yeah.
um, you know, and maybe it wouldn't have taken a year,
Mm.
maybe it would have been a little easier to, because I think now that I've gotten started, I think writing is a lot like it's almost therapy,
Mhm.
Mhm. Cathartic.
and and if I had started to really just trust God with that pain in the beginning, that would have been a lot easier to walk through for sure.
And also got to give yourself grace, because men are just wired that when they love someone, they want to
Yeah,
fix everything for them. It's just the way
yeah,
they're wired. And so that's
Mhm.
like a natural way to feel.
for
And
sure.
we have to learn to lean on God. And I think sometimes going through things like this teaches us how to let go of our own control and let
Yeah,
God do it.
Mm. I
yeah,
think it's hard for women too. As a mom, I'm used to being the one that like juggles everything, right?
Mhm.
And when my mom was sick, there was just one more thing to juggle. And
yeah.
then she passed away, and it was like I was kind of mourning the whole time she was sick because we were slowly losing her, you know?
Mm,
But at the same time, I was busy taking care of her and helping with her and,
yeah,
taking care of, like, making sure that that she was being taken care of and at the home, and then when she passed, it was all of a sudden, like, everything just kinda came crashing in on me, and I feel like I can't juggle right since then, and
mm,
um I think my girls are good, my family is good, that the house is what it is. We're in the middle of construction, so it is what it is. But it's like I feel like this is the part of my life, and maybe it's because it's creative, or maybe it's just because, like Tina said, it reminds me of my mom. This is the part that I haven't been able to juggle yet, and so um, it's possible that it's just I'm not giving it time, but it also there's lots of different things. But you know, maybe I need to start journaling more too, because I've not,
mm,
we've only dabbled in nonfiction. We have the one workbook that we've done, but maybe this is going to be my first, foray into nonfiction. Um,
yeah,
though I do believe that we can, Drew obviously writes nonfiction. Tina and I write fiction. I think that whether you write fiction or nonfiction, I think that the same um, story holds true, that you can use what you're going through in your writing as well.
yeah,
And
Um,
I think that there needs to be this a little bit of talk about time,
Space. Yeah.
because time, like, I'm currently throwing around the idea of writing the story of my life because so many people keep telling me to do it.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I wrote about today in honor of the topic. Um, but
mm,
if I had tried to write it in while I was in the midst of it, like, hindsight is 2020, and I can look back from a place of healing and look back at the brokenness and see it for what it was, and I feel like I couldn't have written it until now.
Yeah.
mm,
So, like, sometimes you just have to give yourself grace and time and space between whatever this hard thing you're
Mhm.
going through is and the time when you're going to write about it.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and honestly, that's one of the things that I've been trying to walk through a little bit, and it's a new term that I've kind of held on and onto. Actually, it's another podcast from the IA fam,
Mhm.
from Intern Academy, but the idea of liminal space, where you're just kind of like in the in between of like,
Mhm.
okay, something has happened and you need to kind of get to the next thing, but you don't really know what that is, or you're just kind of stuck. And I think one of the things that brought me out of that place of like really, I mean, to be frank, like just depression and that in between, was that I had to kind of mourn the possibilities and
Mhm.
dreams that I had for my daughter, where it was like, you know, the 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 hope and the heartbeat of like, oh, I want to, you know, have grandkids. I want to, you know, see her get married. I want to do all these
Mhm.
things, you know. It's like those things probably are not going to happen, you know. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I'm writing about in that book is this thought that when we put her in school, we had to set up an IEP and had to sign her up for life skills classes, which is like from day one, they ask you, do you want your kid to graduate from high school or not? And it's like,
Mhm.
how can you ask me that question? My daughter's 4. You know, it's
Right.
like, that's awful, you know, and,
But that's
but
one of
in
those
that,
things that's just taken for granted with all our other kids.
yeah,
You
Mm.
expect
yeah,
that they're gonna graduate from high school.
right, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so those dreams and stuff, like, I just had to mourn those things, you know, and,
Mm.
um, you know, it's weird because she didn't die, you know, it's not, she's still there,
Right.
you know, and I just have to find new dreams and stuff, and it's just odd, for sure.
Mm. And I, like I said, we had an episode on guilt. Did you ever find yourself feeling guilty the fact that you were mourning those things, yet your child is still there, the same child that God gave you and intended for you to
Yeah.
have the whole time? It was really just your own expectations, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
I think about that with my losing I didn't lose just my mom. People that have been with us for a while on the podcast know, I lost a lot of family members over the past several years,
Mhm.
people that were very, very close to me. And, there's a part of me that sometimes it gets, angry that I lost them, but then there's another part of me that realizes that this was God's intent the whole time. This is how long I got with them. This was his plan all along, and it's only
Mhm.
me and my own personal, what I thought was gonna happen that is affecting that. And so sometimes for myself, I have to step outside of myself and realize that it's not about Jen. It's not always
Yeah.
about Jen, right? So,
When
but
my
that's all.
husband and I do counseling, when he's gonna marry somebody, we usually, have couples counseling, and we do it together sometimes. It's
Mm.
always all about expectations
Yeah.
Mm,
because, that's where the problems come from when you get married, and then suddenly what you expected isn't reality.
Mhm.
And I
mhm,
think it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how we do that with, so many things in our lives, and
mhm,
it's not just the, oh, what you expect your husband or your wife to do, you know,
mhm.
and it's how you expect your job to turn out, and, you know,
You know?
everything in between. Yeah.
And with
Mhm.
our children too, I have 4 children, and I definitely had expectations when they were little, and they've all grown up now and left the nest, and pretty much none of them, like,
I hope the kids don't listen to the podcast.
no, they don't. I don't know if they do, but they know. They know that they haven't, my daughter, okay, my daughter is married and has a baby, and she is, active in ministry in her local church. She's the preschool director, and, so she's probably come the closest, but, there's still things. So, you just have to because my children are not me, they're their own people,
Yeah.
and you have to kinda come to terms with that.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I look forward to reading the book that you're working on right now, and I honestly do think you're gonna put out more books, just on this topic too, Drew, because you're a great guy, and I think that your daughter is blessed to have you as a dad, but I guarantee that you're blessed to have her as a daughter.
Oh,
And
yeah.
as she grows, as you grow, and as your family becomes the family that God has intended, I think that you're gonna have a lot of wisdom and insight to share with others, not just other parents of children with autism, but parents and just others that are in the thick of it. So we appreciate you being on the show today. This has been
Yeah.
great.
And I'm
Yeah.
definitely gonna recommend your podcast to my husband because I know a lot of times as a pastor, he feels like he's on an island
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
and
Yeah.
that there's nobody, there's no lunch table for him, even,
Yeah.
Mm,
so
Yeah. It's
so true.
definitely hard, and I think that's one of the things that, you know, one of the pieces that really helped me to get through that time, because we started, if you go all the way back and listen to like the first couple episodes of the podcast, we started that podcast in the middle of me dealing with all that stuff.
Mhm.
And we went to I hadn't actually gotten the chance to go to that retreat that we just got back from last month, until like, and I was in intern academy in like 2011,
Oh,
something
wow.
like that, and so, and I had never gotten back until like 2018, so I
Mhm.
mean, it was a long time in between. And so I felt like I knew nobody, in some of those spheres and stuff. And
Mhm.
I ended up just randomly calling Nate, because he was one of my connections back to intern academy. And I was like, man, I just need a friend right now. I need somebody I can talk to like every now and then. Like, would you just be there for me? It's like, this is the
Mhm.
most awkward conversation I've ever had in my life. It's like, but finally asking for someone to be there for me led to, now I've got, all these people that are a part of my life. And
You have not
uh,
because you asked
yeah,
not.
sometimes,
And
yeah, yeah, but having that space where you can not be alone goes a really
Yeah,
long way, for sure.
yeah, for sure.
well, real quick, give a plug to Intern Academy. Let everybody know what it is, because you're an alum of it, and then give us a
Yes.
little bit more information about your podcast and where people can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Intern Academy is this really awesome organization that kind of connects a lot of us. It's a community, but really the reason why it exists is to be able to see the next generation of ministry leaders kind of rise up. And
Mhm.
so, the idea is that ministry is, people are either dying out of ministry or leaving because they can't, they're not making it, they're burning out, or either they weren't prepared well enough, or they just didn't know what it was really about. And so the idea is kind of creating this pipeline for leaders to enter ministry by training them up ourselves,
Mhm.
and doing it through internships where they're, on the job working, not just going and getting coffee, like taking
Right.
over ministries for a little bit. And it's really, really amazing. It's the reason why I got into ministry, personally. Just had someone pour into me the life that they had, and it's cool to have that chance to do that for other people too. So Intern Academy, it's great too, because it's not just for the little, interns. Like, there's coaches who have been in ministry for longer than I've been alive, and which is, just awesome to see kind of the old school veterans in there and still caring about the next generation coming up.
Mhm.
But there's, everybody in between too, and
Mhm.
so it's really, really good stuff. As far as the lunch table goes, the
Mhm.
lunch table was born out of some awesome, intern academy relationships and friendships. So Matt, Nate, and I, all together kind of just decided one day, hey, we all kind of feel alone. Let's stop feeling alone and help other people not be alone. And so that's really what the lunch table is all about. It's about encouraging people to just be real with each other and find a place to where they can talk about their struggles and their everyday, all that kind of stuff. And then, on the podcast, people get to listen to all of our stuff, which is
Mhm.
always great. And, every now and then we get to have awesome guests like Jen, and just be able to have people on that can add some life to our goals and our listeners' goals and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But you can find us pretty much anywhere on podcast and stuff. We're an audio only podcast. Sorry for you people that really like watching on YouTube. But but I know you we have the link in the show notes and all that stuff. But
Mhm.
really, Spotify and Apple Podcasts are probably like the most popular spots. But
All
it's
right.
it's everywhere.
And it's a lot of fun, so you're gonna have to take a listen, at least listen to the one with me on it, because
Oh yeah.
at one point
Yeah.
I called Drew out. We'll talk about that at the end of this episode when we do our what's next. But this
Yes.
is now we're gonna transition to our favorite part of the episode. It is the feeding of the backs. And for those of you that are new to our show, it's just feedback time. because Jamie used to always ask us at feedback time if our back was well fed. So this is the feeding of the back time. And unlike a regular writing group where you bring edited and kind of polished pieces to your writing group to get real critique, this is hot off the presses. We and Drew, for the first time ever, we had a guest who was willing to do the sprinting with us. And so Drew showed up early and sprinted with us this morning. And so he's going to be sharing his writing as well. Are you nervous, Drew?
Slightly. It's okay.
How before we start reading, how was the experience for you? This is the first time you've ever sprinted as well, right? Not only like sharing it live, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's probably times in my life where I've accidentally sprinted, where it's like the kids are in bed and I pull out my laptop and I'm like, let's go. But but never on purpose. And so I have to say I was a little bit scared, especially once the words came up. Of like what we were trying to include.
We all experienced that.
Man. Woo, man.
Well, Shell's shouting out to you. She says, "Yay, Drew, you can do it."
Yeah. It honestly went way better than I thought it was going to, though. I think it is definitely, I was joking about it a little bit before the show. I definitely got a little preachy. But it's, that's my writing style a little bit too. So it's not, it actually, and it's funnily enough, I think this honestly may start a chapter in my book that I'm working on now. So It's really funny.
We're not surprised. That happens to us all the time. Like the book I'm writing right now is almost entirely inspired from like sprints over the past couple of years. So
That's
it's
awesome.
like, yeah, it's not a shock at all. All right. So since you're the guest, we're going to let you decide. Do you want to go first or do you want to go second?
I'll go first.
Okay, Drew. All right. Okay, so I will share real quick the Lydia is messaging me. You're the only person that knows who that is, but the words for today were solve, weight, WEIGHT, oven, gradient, and landowner. And you, before we started, you said landowner was like gonna give you trouble, but you said you used all 5 of the words.
I did. I figured it out.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, ding, ding. That's awesome.
I feel like that should be like a crossword puzzle kind of thing for like New York Times. Like, hey, do a sprint and figure out how to put these 5 words together.
We should have some sort of award to give you, but we don't.
We should write a book.
There you go. You should write a book
with sprints in it. That would be an awesome idea. Nobody will buy it, but there it is.
All right, Drew, let's hear what you wrote.
All right. Oh, man. Now I'm even more nervous because now I have to read it. All right. One of the most important things about going through life and understanding the true weight of what we suffer through is taking the time to stand outside of what we normally do and where we normally are, and how we're able to understand what truly is going on in our midst. Too often, people try to sit in the moment in their actual space to solve their problems when they are happening. But there is just some serious hurt that can happen there. The thing that people miss out on is that there is still a whole gradient of emotion happening in that moment. If you stay in that moment and allow yourself to only try and work through it there in that second, the problem is that you truly can find yourself getting stuck with those emotions. Instead, and this is even biblical, you can take those issues to the one who is able to change the situation, or at the very least, your heart and emotion around the situation. Very often, we learn so many good lessons from the heat of the oven of desperation from God. But if we won't take the time to go to him and learn from him, then we miss out. It personally reminds me so much of the story of Habakkuk, a prophet that was in the fire, in the heat of the oven of desperation, trying to call on God to solve his problems and feeling the weight of what he felt was best for the people. Instead of God fixing all the problems, he changed Habakkuk's heart. He showed him that he was God and he knew what he was doing.
Amen.
That might not have solved the problem, but in the wake of that moment, it changed the whole situation, and Habakkuk turned to worship. How often do we trust God enough to do that with our problems, to set aside in that moment and take them to him? Of course, there are times when he is leading us enough in that moment, But sometimes we need to understand that trusting God is not always an in the moment kind of thing. Sometimes it's for those moments of solitude that we need to take them to Him. And sometimes I feel like the truth about some of these things that we go through that God allows in our midst become a thing to come into our lives so that we can be like the man, so that we can take these things and be like the man from Jesus's parable, to go off into the field and find a great treasure and to go and buy that land from the landowner so that we can sit in the place and have of the riches that we found. When problems come up, maybe we can see them as something that God is helping us to yield and take to Him and trust Him and pursue His presence rather than just being stuck where we tried to quickly deal with it on our own. And then I referenced Matthew 13:44, which is, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. The challenge here is to stop getting stuck because of ourselves and to take those moments and use them to find the treasure that God has laid out for us.
Drew, that is gold. So good. First of all, gradient, great use of the word gradient.
I love it.
Ding, ding, ding. That was awesome. We have never actually talked with anyone or had anyone share with us that it is a nonfiction writer that has done this first. So not only are you the first guest to actually do this with us, because most of them bow out, but you were the first one to do it as nonfiction, and I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, that is a really good exercise. I really like that. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
I want to give you the highest compliment that I could think of in this moment. That'll preach.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. And you got so much. Okay, so I got all the words in, but I wrote slow today. I only got 315 words. Do you know how many words you have? Did you count?
No, I don't know. I use this program that specifically doesn't count anything like that so that I don't distract myself.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that was a lot, and it was well done.
I wonder if you have a cheater in your top.
In your top 10, maybe.
Maybe.
All right. Shell says, masterfully done, Drew. Thank you so much for sharing. Such a great encouragement. I agree. So well done. Yes. I loved how you used landowner. I also love that when you got to the words, you kind of emphasized it a little bit as you read it. I was like, yeah, because I love it when it was. So yeah, super great. Now here's the thing too with this is that that's enough to be an intro to a chapter for sure. But you could also go in and because it's a sprint, right? The whole idea of a sprint is just to get the words out. We sometimes call it word vomiting. You just get the words out, but you can always go back and fix things or expand on them. Or the last time that we sprinted a chapter I did, I knew I was going too fast through the chapter. I knew that I needed to stop and what I call marinate, in certain parts of what I was, but I had to get to the point where it made kind of more sense, which sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we stop the sprint and it just stops in the middle of something. And we usually are angry, because we listen to say something that Tina writes and then we don't get to know what happens next. We're like, no. But I know that I can go back. And so the same thing with this, this is just listening to it. This sounds like gold. I just think this could easily be the beginning of a chapter for you. Yeah. But it also could be something that you might go back and expand a little bit, or there might be something that, so good.
My intellection just wants to grab hold of that and just chew on it because there's so much deep truth in everything that he wrote. You could take it a sentence at a time and turn it into devotions for just forever. Yeah, just crazy amount of really deep truth and really well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so well done. Awesome. I don't want to follow that, but I guess it's my turn. I guess I'm going to have to. So,
are we doing the Widows of the West again?
We are, and I'm actually picking up. If you remember the last time I wrote, it was he came. She thought he was someone else, so she just hollered to come in, and he came in. And remember, he stepped between her and her gun once she saw that it was him, and and then he saw the scars on her arms. So that's where we're picking up at the very end. He had mentioned that the scars are only the beginning of the story, because that was our prompt. Sometimes we use sentence prompts, and that was last week. So, all right. So this is where we're picking up. And I'm not going to do a Southern accent or anything. Yes'm, Cade said. I suppose it ain't. Colleen McGuire stared him down like she was trying to take measure of him. Her eyes narrowed, and he wondered if she had judged the weight of his character as too light or too heavy, because her eyes told him that she had not found him to be level. She tugged at the towel in her hand, and Cade wondered if she was nervous. No doubt, he thought, since he stood between her and her shotgun, and he was no small obstacle. I ain't here to hurt you. Widow McGuire gave a guffaw at that, but it came out more nervous sounding than her hands fidgeting had. That's not well written. She quickly turned toward the oven and, using her apron, pulled a skillet full of steaming cornbread from it. You wouldn't have a chance to, Mr. McNeil, she said without turning to him. My foreman is just out back. One scream from me and he'd be in here to take care of you. Cade had met her foreman, and Cade wasn't certain what was more adorable, the fact that she thought that frail old man could take Cade out, or the way her Irish lilt became more obvious as her anxiety grew. You won't have no call to holler for him, ma'am. I'm just here to offer a solution to your problem. She turned a confused look at him. And what problem do you think I need to solve? I'm here to offer my assistance from one landowner to another. I don't know what assistance you're offering, McNeil, but I don't need it. We both know that you do. In an instant, the nervous fidgeting stopped, and Cade noticed a redness creep up her neck in a gradient until it settled into a bright redness in her cheeks. He'd angered her, and the result was devastatingly beautiful. 3, 2, 1. That's it.
Classic.
Nice.
Classic Jennifer Carlton. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, classic romance, classic Jennifer Carlton. Like the chemistry, the ability to get that chemistry on the page in words.
Oh.
Like, like you can watch it in a movie, and you can, and I think that the reading it in a book comes a little bit closer to real life because you can put your own experiences into it, but you do a really good job of getting that tension and that chemistry, like in the kind of battle that's going on between it. It's really good.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even know the characters, but you can just feel that moment. Just like I love how you were able to kind of slow down the moment, even too. That it was like it was almost like you're going through slow motion, feeling every piece of emotion in there and every ounce of everything that was there to have. That was great.
I appreciate that, especially since as I'm reading it, I know when I notice. I can see my writing where I noticed that I was running out of time. And so because I don't know what assistance you're offering me, Neil, but I don't need it. We both know that you do. I would like to stop there. Like, I want to know what he's thinking, or I want some sort of movement or something there, not just him saying that. Cause yeah, but anyway, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Shell says, so good, Jen. Love hearing it from his perspective with his inner thoughts. Oh, thanks. And I love that too. I love this guy. I can't wait to have this whole book together. Piper says, I'm so mad. I keep losing signal. I have to listen later. I've missed so much gold.
Poor Piper.
Yeah, poor Piper. You're going to love what Drew wrote if you haven't been able to hear it yet. So, all right, Tina, save the best for last.
Okay, well, I don't want anybody to sign off and go away because you want to come back and listen to our what's next. But I do have a trigger warning.
Okay.
For what I wrote, and I didn't plan it that way. It's just what came out.
Okay.
And so if you've ever experienced any kind of trauma around sexual abuse, you might want to mute us. So, and I apologize. It's just what came out from the sprint, and I didn't plan it that way. So, like I said, this came out of people telling me I should write my story. And it's just me writing about a moment of my history. So I don't know what you call that, narrative nonfiction or whatever. I don't know.
Let's hear it.
I used 2 of the words, I think.
Valiant effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I really didn't know how to solve the problem that presented itself that day. Nothing in life had prepared me for it. None of my experiences came close to this. It wasn't until much later in life that I even realized the weight of the decision I ended up making. Michelle was on the couch, knees pulled up to her chest, her arms wrapped around her legs. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hair a tangled mess. I wanted to wrap my arms around her, but it was too much of a risk. Showing any amount of weakness could be fatal. Kevin was standing in front of us, his arms moving almost like the conductor of an orchestra. I'd played second violin at the concert the year we got to play the Rocky theme, so I'd had a front row seat. I remember the movement of his arms and the butterflies in my gut at playing in front of what in my mind was the whole city of Anchorage. It made me nauseous. Kevin's movements brought that sensation back. That and the words he was saying. With the money you'll make, you could drive a nice car, live in a nice place. Quit your crying. It ain't all that bad. Think of what you'll gain for just a few minutes on your back. A sob erupted from Michelle and her entire body began to shake. She was an innocent, not like me. I was a veteran, been doing it since 6, only not getting paid. Not that I wanted to do it, but if I let myself break down, I knew that would be it. Finally, he was done. He tossed the bag of McDonald's at us and went in the other room. I felt sick inside. I wasn't sure how I'd get anything down, but I had to do it. No weakness. I handed Michelle her burger and fries. She stared at them as if they were a foreign object from outer space. You gotta eat, I whispered. Keep your strength up and your mind sharp. She erupted into fresh sobs. I took my food out and saw the ketchup packets lying innocently in the bottom of the bag. I noticed a box of tampons in the bathroom. I have an idea, I whispered to Michelle. Don't worry, everything's going to be okay. It was a lie, but it slipped off my tongue like a million other lies I'd told. After all, when your whole life is a lie, when who you are is a lie, lying becomes more true than telling the truth. I took a bite of my burger. It was cold and felt like sawdust in my mouth. Still, I chewed, rehearsing my plan over and over again in my mind. Our destiny would not be whatever happened here in the Arctic Tern Motel. Not if I had anything to do with it.
Oh, Tina.
Hmm. That is so real.
Yeah. So, I know this is like hard for you to write this, and so I just want to say that thank you for doing this because I know
Yeah.
that this is hard. Um, I know a little bit more. You've shared a little bit more about this a while back, and like wow. So let me just talk on the writing. Well
Please,
done.
let's not
Yes.
get into
Let's
psychology of
focus on
everything.
the yeah. That's why I was like so silent because I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't know how much to like, but yes, let's talk about the writing. I love you writing in first person. Like this is, I mean, I obviously it's a memoir, so it would be first person, but I love you writing in first person. It's very real and the moment is real and raw, and you brought that in your writing. The way that you have written it, the and I'm glad you didn't try to stuff all these words in there. I'm glad that you
Yeah.
just wrote in the direction that you were led, and I felt like it was gritty and emotional, and just this little bit of it like makes me want to crawl through the page and hug these two girls. And so well
Hmm.
done. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something about like hearing um anyone's, but I mean, being able to know that that's part of your actual story too, like
Mhm.
to hear people's stories and just to immediately feel for you, in that moment too, and
Mhm.
yeah, number one, I'm sorry that that is a part of your story, but it's
Mhm.
that's definitely in the realm of our topic today for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But understanding and getting to walk people through that story, in that first person moment like that,
Mhm.
that could be really powerful for a lot of people for sure.
Mhm.
Right. And while I escaped before anything happened, like before their plans could be put to light, God did call me eventually to the inner city, and one of our main ministries was to the prostitutes who
Mm,
worked on the corner that the church was on.
Mhm.
mm,
Um, and to go out and talk to them and listen to their stories and be able to empathize with them. And I think a lot of those girls, they said, one girl said to us, how can God love me when I can't love myself?
Mm.
And so, how are you going to convince someone like that Jesus loves them? You have to love them. And you can't pretend to love them, and you can't go through the motions of loving them. You have to actually love them. And I feel like the experiences that I went through allowed me to see them through different eyes and allowed me to have genuine love for them. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So good, Tina. Shell says, so gut wrenching, Tina. I really love you, and I'm crying for those girls. The world is a ghetto. So agreed. Wow, we should have had you go first. That's
Yeah.
so good, but like it's so like all right.
Ooh.
We're gonna bring it back up and we're gonna move into our final segment of the show, which is our what's next. And I'm gonna start this off with pointing out for everyone who's gonna go listen to Drew's podcast is I called Drew out in the middle of his podcast and told him he needed to up his game. So
Yeah.
true. And I'm glad that like you weren't offended by that.
No,
just,
no, because I was already feeling it before you said it. That's really what happened. It was like
True,
man, I need to do stuff.
So in light of you upping your game, what is next for Drew Wallingford? What's on your next? What are you doing next? Like, what are you going to do this next week? This next month?
So I really would love to finish at least a chapter or two of that book that I started working on. I think that's definitely like on the horizon. But other than that, we're right now it's like summer camp season, for
Right.
youth ministry. So that's always a interesting time of year because we're like not quite all the way crazy busy, but once summer camp happens, then it's like, oh, now I got to get ready for fall and all this stuff, and so
Right.
trying to like find the balance in the middle of that stuff, but I think working on that book is going to be a really big piece of that for me for sure.
Right. And I also had talked to you guys about writing groups and sprinting, and so you and Matt, are you guys going to try to do some sprinting together, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Even on that, literally that night after recording, we both went through and did some stuff, and I had sent him my stuff that I wrote through and all that. And so, yeah, I think honestly, you really inspired us to jump in and like, all right, let's take this seriously. This is something that we can do. And probably the only other thing that that actually I have a feeling is probably going to be a lot easier than I think it is right now. But you were talking about this idea of pastors taking sermon series and making them into something that could be a book or a small devotional or something like that. And I have like all of my sermons from the last like 2 years that I'm like, that's fresh meat right there.
That's awesome.
I'm so ready. So
my number one learner is salivating right now.
So I'm thinking about that stuff. So we'll see what happens with it.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to read more from you guys. I really think that this is going to be a good thing. And we talked a little bit in the podcast about passive income and like that. And so I think that as a pastor, especially, it's so important to have like that additional, like, something out there, and plus like retirement someday, like you may want to just like flow into your authorship, and so it's very exciting.
You never know.
All right. So what's next is, I am going to work on this book cover. Like I want to so bad just keep writing in this new book because it's new and it's fresh, but I'm gonna do the book cover this week. I'm like, that is my goal, if nothing else. My girls are getting ready to go to Nazarene Youth Conference, which is a big deal every 4 years in the Church of the Nazarene. It is half mission trip, half gigantic conference. There will be thousands of teenagers from all over the world that go to this. And I'm not going with them, and I'm nervous as all get out. My girls are going to Tampa Bay to do mission work in the streets, and I am like not going to be there. And so I need something to keep me busy so that I don't like lose my mind this next week as they're getting ready to go. But I'm very proud of them. They've chosen to do this. They've like raised their money to go, and I know it's a good thing. And I'm praying that it will be life-changing for them as well, that God will reveal to them himself and his future plans for them as well. So there's a lot I'm praying for, but I'm also a mama and I'm so nervous. So I think doing the book cover and the blurb and all that stuff is what I'm going to be working on this week. So,
Yeah.
what about you, Tina? What's next for you?
Well, immediately after the podcast, we're going to the Glamper. We
Ooh.
we usually have girls' night here every Friday night, where so my
Mhm.
daughter brings her daughter Eliana, and then my son James's daughter comes over, and we have girls' night, and then we have Pastor Bob is an honorary girl for girls' night usually because like we can't kick him out of the house. But we're gonna go to the Glamper, and we're gonna have a real girls' night with just the girls, and it's gonna be great. And then, so my goal for next week is I am going to open my manuscript at 8 a.m. every morning, even if I just sit there and stare at it.
It's a great goal. It's
I am
amazing
gonna
just
open the
opening it
manuscript.
Yeah.
because you're already there. It's like it's
Mhm.
getting across that line. Like, I know that Becca Syme actually talks about that a lot, but that's a great goal. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually her idea. So,
yeah, no, I
but
think it's a great
that's
idea.
my plan for next week, and I hopefully will accomplish it.
All right. Well, if you are listening to this, we hope that you'll go over to our Facebook group and share your what's next so we can all encourage each other and keep each other accountable. If you've never joined our Facebook group, which Drew has recently, so if you have questions for Drew or
Yeah.
want to chat with Drew, you can chat with him in the Facebook group. There is a link in our show notes where you can join that as well. Thanks so much for being with us today, Drew. This was great. We really had a
Yeah,
good
I'm so
time.
glad that I was able to do it. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, anytime. All right. So until next week, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.